Hi, my name is Emmanuel Maciel, and I'm a conceptual artist from Washington, D.C. And this is my work, The Complexity and Cause of Identity, Autotune Machine. And when making this work, I really was interested in black economics and what people do kind of where I'm from to escape their economical situations. And one of those main things they take part of is music. Music has always been one of the main ways where African Americans can use their voice and their talent to escape their economical circumstances. So I kind of was inspired by the idea of if you didn't have the proper equipment, to make the auto-tune sound, what could you do to make that sound without having a fancy computer or computer software? And I wanted to achieve the auto-tune sound without, the software or the equipment. And also, shining light on, the resourcefulness and the resourcefulness of African Americans throughout the diaspora. If you didn't have this, you would use this, and that to get to what you needed. So that's the whole idea of this sculpture. The sculpture, I carved this mask, put it on a stand that I hand built, and put it in front of a actual everyday fan with a microphone and attached to an amplifier. So when one person sings through the microphone, sings through the mask, their sound waves go through the fan, and the microphone picks it up, kind of mimicking the sound and the illusion of autotune. And all that very much interested me when I came up with the idea, just to say, hey, me being from the inner city, mostly everybody I know, majority of people I know, they want to be a rapper, just to change their living situation, to increase their quality of life. So I kind of wanted to make a work about that kind of struggle, and also the resourcefulness of just being black and putting things together to get where you need to go.
Hello, my name is Shamika Chantal Johnson, and I'm a curator and writer. And what drew me to this piece, why I wanted to turn it into a performance piece, was the fact that, I felt like no one was really channeling the sculptures they were making. This is an African-inspired sculpture. You're taking elements from traditional African masks, and usually what artists would do would make the work and then sell it or show it, display it. And I kind of wanted to activate it in a way that was sort of underground and uniquely charged. Not in a museum space, but definitely in a gallery space that kind of felt like a community space at the same time. Looking at this work, initially I was thinking of his original piece, The Complexity and Cause of Identity #1, that he had in his show at the SBA Gallery called Here We Are. And that piece was an interactive piece. People would go up to a podium and kind of insert their space into an African mask to see themselves reflected on the TV screen. And I thought, it would be really cool to kind of have that same level of interaction with this piece, but though we're dealing with a pandemic, we're in a health crisis, we couldn't quite do it in a way where we wanted a whole bunch of people to have a mosh pit in the sculpture. So instead, we decided to make it a performance piece. And I think it's more interactive that way because people can kind of engage with it on so many different platforms, so many different levels. And when people see it in person, their initial interaction with it is through the video, through the performance. So they have an idea of how it sounds, how it moves, without their actual interaction with the sculpture. And I really love having a performer in the mask because, when we talk about black performance, there's this kind of reflection on the mannerisms, the style, the movement of the black body in a space, and how that reflects across, the history of a black body in the American landscape, or any sort of landscape really. When we once were the landscape, and now we've become mobile, living humans, right? Or we're trying to be humans constantly. So I thought it was really interesting to have him spaced in the mask where he's not quite human, he's very spiritual, and there's a transfer there, transfer in identity, transfer in soul. So when he's actively moving in the mask and singing or rapping through the sculpture, through the video, through the performance, there is a transfer. So he kind of becomes a carbon copy, so people can kind of follow it. And I think initially with the complexity and cost of identity #1, the initial sort of discussion around that piece was a digital blackface, what it means for any sort of non-African descendant person to come into a mask and, you know, kind of adopt a black identity. And I felt this took it a step further where, you know, we're speaking on black performance, we're doing this in the digital space, posting it online. So how often are we interacting with black performance online, and how often is that copied over and over again till it becomes so far removed from the original that it's totally something different. And that was kind of what was going through my mind.
I'm Yoga Chanel. You Only Kill Once Fly Nigga Chanel from Washington, D.C. I'm an alternative hip-hop artist. You Only Kill Once pretty much stands for it only takes one time to do something. You do it and you can do it over and over again. It's about jumping into your fears and jumping into your dreams and accomplishing all the things that you want to do in life. And so this is kind of an example of that, because the Autotune machine is very important for a musician such as myself, because a lot of musicianship, and especially hip-hop, which is African-American driven, is do it yourself. And this is a perfect example of doing it yourself. A lot of times when you're first coming up and you're making music, it's hard to find the money to go to a studio, or even not even necessarily the money. Some people don't have the infrastructure for a studio. I'm from Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, we lack the infrastructure for a studio. But if you want to make it and you want to be great, you do it yourself. You go find a pair of Apple headphones, you get a computer, you get any old computer that you can get up off the street or borrow your man's. Hell, there's some people who go and record and make hits out of the library, and I just feel like the Autotune machine shows the versatility and the resiliency and the innovativeness that black people have, because we come from a very long way from making music from the plantation to now that we're sitting in big studios. But the one thing that's always been in common is the hard work it took, the feeling that it takes, and most importantly, the innovativeness. There's a level of creativity that needs to be displayed when making music, and I feel like this mask brings out that creative side of you, because mostly we're spent performing standing up and sitting down, and it puts you in an awkward, uncomfortable position, much like black people are already in, but it makes you have to secede from an awkward and uncomfortable position. And it's just like, I feel like this performing in this mask in relation to the black experience and the black experience as an artist is all a relation, and it's just a beautiful experience, and it all just comes together.
I think it was very important to have Yoko come all the way from DC to the Housing Gallery in New York to perform in my sculpture and to activate it, just due to the fact that, you know, him being from the inner city of Washington, D.C., such as myself, you know, I felt like he was a person that really could understand what the sculpture was about. And also his music was very different. When I first heard his music, one of my friends showed it to me in the car, and I heard it, and I was just blown away just from the creativity, the social and political content, and just the vast visceralness of his music. And I was just like, hey, this is very unique. I need to get him up here to get in the sculpture. And so, you know, I just like to thank Housing Gallery here in New York. Thank you for allowing all of us to be a part of this production, and to actually bring the production in the gallery, which I really think is important to bring this kind of social content, not only into a gallery, but a black gallery. You know, also thank you to Shamika for curating this wonderful performance. And last but not least, thank you, Yoko, for coming all the way from DC to be part of this performance.